She bent over to take her shots. Well, we left after that, and she said she had to get home, as she had some errands to run. And being new to the neighborhood and all, I agreed, since I had a Facebook application that I had to update. Obviously, I didn't give her that reason. I mean, Jesus, what the hell? Passing up on an amazing girl for Facebook? Ugh. So we exchanged numbers and parted ways. Couldn't believe it. I had actually scored a beautiful woman. Hell yes. Weeks and months passed on. We continued to talk and regularly dating. The relationship moved pretty quickly, and it seemed that we were truly matched for each other. After about 7 months of dating, I asked her to marry me. I popped the question on the 17th, as that's how many games we played. She found that so romantic and flew into my arms, screaming yes to the skies, and things were finally looking up. I moved out of my shitbox apartment and into her home, and I always admired the cozy feel of her 2-bedroom ranch home. Something perfect to start a family in. As I was moving my final things in, I noticed how much of a mess I was making with my boxes of stuff and all, and I apologized and motioned to the basement to finish moving Her face instantly darted to mine. In a hurried and almost frantic voice, she assured me that she'd take care of the rest of the things. She assured me that she'd take care of the rest of the things and that I should relax. It was a bit odd, sure, but she had been through so much excruciating sadness throughout her life that her having a psychiatric illness is something I expect. I complied to her request. The next few months were great. We never got tired of each other, and on our wedding day, what we shared on the altar was so special that I firmly believe that angels surrounded us and serenaded us with harps, trumpets, connected, and sparked so brightly that the entire room was illuminated. I'll leave out the details as this is not a pornographic piece. She was always leery of me approaching the basement. Some to the point of arguing with me about it. But aside from that, I didn't see any fault in her. Until everything that I knew was shattered. One day, she told me she was going to the grocery store. I noted that I wanted some in order to make hamburgers for dinner, and she smiled at me with that cute, adorable smile that I've grown to know and love, and headed out. After climbing Burger King's corporate ladder, I finally attained the position of regional financial manager for the entire state. I was working on some budget information as to all the franchises across the state, and it was a long and arduous process, but I was getting just above 6 figures for it, so after each report was fully completed and evaluated, I moved the files to a USB drive so I could upload them to a meeting the next day. Well, to my horror, with only 3 reports left to finish, the computer crashed. If I didn't finish these reports, I would surely lose my job. I called my wife and asked her if she had another computer or something that I could use, but she didn't answer. I rummaged through the house to find something to finish these reports with to no avail, and desperate times called for desperate measures, so I took the daring risk of approaching the basement. The handle was unusually cold, and the door was locked. Frustrated and defeated, I slumped on the couch in a depression. And this is until I realized that there was a specific flower pot always guarded with her life. On a hunch, I went to it and I found the key at the bottom of the pot, under the dirt. As soon as I opened the door, a rancid and tangible odor attacked me like a falling wall from a decrepit building. The entire basement looked as if it was wasting away, a clear contrast with the rest of the home. The heavy layers of dust upon every surface suggested that it had been accessed in years. Using my cell phone as a flashlight, I guided myself down the stairs and flicked the light. Surprisingly, the bulb still worked. Well, the walls looked molded. The wood was breaking down, the stench was putrid. The entire place... I encountered a strong sense of dysphoria after setting foot in the room. I quickly searched for an old computer with the intent of running upstairs as quickly. Well, to my luck and astonishment, there was an old laptop and charger in the corner, hidden under some boxes and books. Oddly enough, one of the boxes was one and one after I first moved in. I hadn't seen some of this stuff in so long. Ignoring the nostalgia, I seized the computer and charger and raced to the bedroom. After giving the laptop a few minutes of power, I booted it up. It ran on Windows XP and was quite the technological dinosaur compared to the modern equipment. It had Microsoft Office, so it was acceptable. As soon as Windows finished booting up, a system message appeared on the screen, notifying me that new sources had been added to video cache, and if I'd like to check it. I had never seen a system message like this before. I knew that snooping is generally taboo. Curiosity overcame me. I was taken to a hidden file that required a password to access it. Rolling my eyes, I moved the cursor to the X and suddenly something typed in the password for me. A bit frightened at this point, I was sucked into the screen. There were 4 videos entitled him.avi, 1.avi, 2, and y.avi. All 4 thumbnails were pure black. Curious. I clicked on the file entitled him.avi. Done that. The video was extremely shaky and grainy, and I could barely make out the figure of a man tied to some sort of metallic rope. A woman moving as if she was floating on air, a single bone in her body, but yet being able to slowly hover around the room, came into the picture. She brought out a knife and started slowly cutting the man. The man screamed in brutal pain as the woman slowly cut him to pieces. Blood poured from his mouth and all of his lacerations as the woman dug the knife in deeper. His clothing was slowly stripped from his body. Each article was removed. She used a lighter to set all of the newly exposed hair on fire. Covered in horrific burns and the man had stopped screaming and was now simply bawling. He occasionally screamed, "Why?" but that was all he could muster. Each time he did, the woman stabbed him again. She began laughing as the man began vomiting blood and entrails. She picked up the small, solid piece of knife and slowly licked the knife clean, giggling like a schoolgirl. She then proceeded to gouge the man's left eye out while he was still alive. I couldn't watch anymore. I closed the video. Shaken and horrified, I clicked on 1.avi. I had to know what was going on. This time it was a young boy, about 8 years old, bound into the chair. He looked and innocent. I shook my head and fell into tears. Such a thing was not about this boy. The video was of the same quality as the last one, however, the background was much brighter. They seemed to be in an abandoned household, apart and in ruins. The woman floated over to the boy, much like she did in the last video, and kissed him gently on the cheek. She slowly brought heedless of the brightness mentioned before over to the boy, one by one until the entire video was white. After a while, the camera was so that the boy could be seen again, and the innocent look, once seen in the beginning of the video, turned into one of excruciating pain. The heat lamp burning his clothes and skin, bubbles and blisters began rapidly forming on his skin, as he too screamed in pain. As with the man, he screamed, "Why?" and was punished each time by being brutally lashed with a belt studded with pieces of what appeared to be broken glass. The blisters began to boil as the child was roasted alive. Eventually, the screaming stopped and the boy fell into seizures. At this point, the same giggle last video could be heard again, this time even louder. She then took a knife and carved "I am a fucking fag" into the child's melting torso as he screamed. Eventually, the boy stopped moving. I closed out at that point. I needed to see the next one. I had to witness this. This had to be stopped. With such a clicked on 2.avi. This time, there was no one strapped to the chair. Instead, an infant car seat was in the chair with what seemed to be a newborn infant tightly strapped inside. Like the previous videos. A woman floated over. She rubbed its head and briefly went off camera. She came back with a syringe and it into the child's body, injecting a blue liquid into the child. Unique to the collection, the video began fast-forwarding. First, the infant seemed normal, happy, smiling, carefree. As the fast-forward progressed, it grew more and more uncomfortable. It started coughing and wheezing. It began puking up white liquid and began crying, almost as if it was too saying. A dark bottle was briefly placed in front of the camera with the words, "Tasty Juice," written up. The bottle was turned over to reveal its contents, a blue liquid that sizzled when it reached the ground. The video then went black. Shaking. I forced myself to click y.avi, but before the video played, I noticed this file was within the last hour. Almost blinded by fear, I swallowed my apprehension and opened my eyes. This time, there was just the woman. No other person was present. She was facing away from the camera and was speaking in a demonic tone. I can't recall exactly, but here's a paraphrased transcript of what she said. "Hello? Clearly by now, know that I'm not the person you thought I was. I'm a sick and twisted woman. I love this. It makes me so somebody die, especially at my hand. I know you're watching this, and I know you're terrified. Most of those that I have killed are swarming around you right now, telling you to pull away from the screen, to save yourself. Yet you sit there and watch, waiting for some happy ending or reasonable explanation at the events that you have just witnessed. There are no special effects here. What you saw was real. I love watching this footage, so much as to pleasure myself to it, but I had to hide it. You couldn't know. You're a lonely piece of shit you to turn me in. You are so desperate for love. You fell in love, killer." The woman turned around, and instantly I recognized the face of my wife. Even feel emotion at this point. I didn't know what to think. My memory had fallen to pieces. I didn't know where I was, or who I had been, or what I was going through. Everything in my life died as I saw the once happy and bubbly eyes that I once saw in my wife, vapid and emotionless. A smile crept across her face, one that makes me quiver, slightest thought of it. This wasn't mental illness, it was just evil. So evil. The video continued. "It's quite a shame. I really loved you. We had this Remember the giggle? I made you fall in love with it. I made you fall in love with me. I lied to you, and want to know the best part? I knew you would find out. I couldn't keep the secret forever. You'd find the key to the basement. Eventually, the stench would become too strong. Eventually, the decaying foundation would begin to topple the house. And finally realize that my children never had leukemia and that my husband never left. I killed them. And they're closer than you think. Why do you think the basement smells so bad? Be surprised how easily it is to cement human remains into the floor. You stepped on my dead children and husband. Feel proud of yourself? I know you're watching this. I just made this video. I know what you've done. I began shaking my head, fearing what I knew was about to. A cold sweat crept upon me as I suddenly felt two eyes bore into the back of my head. I was paralyzed. Those noises hearing, they aren't pipes. Turn around. I slowly turned as I met the psychotic eyes of my wife. She began to giggle. Happened after that. I've been told by witnesses that 2 Jehovah's Witnesses stopped by the house in the middle of my attempted murder. Despite her demonic power, they were arm and restrain her. I was told by physicians that I was violated with the sharp end of a screwdriver and that she placed a block of hot lap. I was tied to a chair, the same one used in the previous videos, and was videotaped. All the videos are now in. Left the job unfinished. She was sure to tell me that I would see her again and that she'd send another minion to finish the job. Finished by telling me that I would never be safe. Ever. She survived the first 3 attempts at lethal injection, but died on the 4th. She was smiling, and she was giggling like a little schoolgirl right before she died. I've been through extensive therapy, and years later I've been able to overcome the horrific trauma I saw and experienced. I still make 6 figures a year. I've made a good network of friends, and my life has been, I feel accomplished and successful, something that I've never felt before. I'm now confident, so confident, in fact, on a date tonight with a girl. She's cute too, with this long, dark, flowing hair and vibrant green eyes.
Halloween is one of the most exciting nights of the year. People dress up to go to parties, children go trick-or-treating. It's one of the few times where the night is truly by everyone. It's ironic that a night devoted to spirits, monsters, and terror is the one night where we feel safe in the darkness. Just think about it. We walk through unfamiliar neighborhoods, visit the home of strangers, and open our doors for people dressed as monsters and serial killers. Would we do that on any other night? Of course not. It would be far too dangerous. Halloween is just a special exception, isn't it? No. The dangers we fear by instinct dark are still very much present on this most revered night. It was last year on Halloween. I was giving out candy to trick-or-treaters, as all good neighbors do. They were showing up pretty early evening, and there were young children accompanied by parents, teenagers, enjoying their night of independence, and even a few nostalgic adults. You never know who door on Halloween. Eventually, it got late, and things started to die down. I hadn't received a trick in an hour, and I was just about to turn off my porch light when there was a knock at the door. For children to be out, but I grabbed my bowl of candy anyway. I opened the door, ready to greet the eager trick-or-treaters, when I saw 2 children. The strangest costumes that I had seen all night. Their skin was pale, ghostly white in fact. Their eyes were completely black. Not just their pupils or irises. Their entire pitch black. Their teeth were jagged like shark's teeth, and they looked more monstrous than any trick-or-treaters that I had seen before. Those were plain. They wore ordinary t-shirts and shorts, normal attire. Confused, I asked them, "What are you supposed to be, some kind of monsters?" "No," The trick-or-treaters responded with discomforting smiles. "We dressed uppins." Startled, I slammed the door and locked it. The trick-or-treaters stood outside the door for a few terrible minutes, banging on the door, calling for me to let them in. It caused the whole house to tremble. I could only watch the door as it shook in its frame. I was sure that it would fall off its hinges at any moment, and they would be in. And yet I couldn't find it in myself to do anything. I was paralyzed where I stood, and transfixed on the door and the sounds of the trick-or-treaters calling to me. Suddenly, it stopped. There was no pounding on the door, no voices outside, and when I looked out the window, I saw nothing. I'm not sure what stopped them from getting. Maybe they never wanted to. By closing the door, I chose trick. But I don't really care. I just know that I never want to see those trick-or-treaters again. I don't know about you, but I'm not opening the door for strangers anymore. Not even on Halloween.
Everyone knows monsters exist.
The low hiss of an all-too-familiar voice invaded Johnny's ears again, as he lay as still as a statue. Tears silently welled up in his eyes as he made sure to keep his arms and legs as close to the middle of the bed as possible. A while before, he had made the mistake to fall asleep with his arm dangling off the side of the mattress, the sensation of his hand being crushed and broken was the most pointed incident next to his 6-year-old mind. His parents had found him on the floor with a mangled wrist. And the doctor told him that he had fallen out of bed. He wanted to believe them. The voice cut through the air again, sounding like a snake's hiss, mashed with a hyena's mocking cackle. When it spoke, the air filled with a sulfuric smell that matched the voice, and it made Jonathan's face in disgust.
Little one, I know you're up there.
It stopped for a moment, and the noise of claws scraping on a hardwood floor started to fill the room.
I heard what your mother said.
Jonathan curled up in the middle of the bed under mountains of blankets and pillows.
She said that I'm in your head, that I don't exist, and if you don't think about me, I'll go away.
It laughed at such a high pitch that it hurt Johnny's ears, and the entire room seemed to shake a little. Suddenly the room plunged into a deadly silence, and it hissed in a serious yet mocking tone.
Well then, little boy, go stop thinking about me.
As Jonathan's ears hit the pillow, the monster laughed again.
You helpless animal. Do anything about me. I have been here since the day you were born, and you will stay here until the day you die.
Would have screamed. He would have tried to leap across his room. He would have tried to turn the lamp on, but he couldn't. He was only a child, and the lamp was always just a little bit out of reach. The door a few inches too far away to jump to, and when he screamed, the only end was the beast matching his scream exactly, sardonically mocking his cries and wails. He would then lie in silence, and giggling echoed from the hell underneath, and the floor shook with heavy fits of laughter.
Go ahead, boy. Scream some more. Scream for your mother. Scream for your father. Scream so loud that the seraphs of heaven and the demons of hell hear you and shakes. Nobody's going to do anything.
The beast had been there for a very long time. A presence that Jonathan only felt at night when the world was asleep. The first memories that Jonathan had of him was dreams. Only scattered fragments were distinguishable in his young mind, but if he really concentrated, he could nightmares that plagued him through his very young childhood, not nearly old enough to understand them or even make sense of what he was seeing. All he could feel was an animalistic run to get away from the creature that lived underneath his bed, to escape the heavy, malevolent breathing that was the backdrop to all his nightmares. Eventually, he got to the point where he could articulate well enough to hint at the Poe. His parents would then sigh and lift up his sheet to show him that there was absolutely nothing there to be afraid of. John, you're perfectly safe. There's nothing down there." And there never was. But then at night, this turned into reality. The breathing wouldn't stop when the dreams did. Instead, it would persist on in a rattling, wheezing drone that lasted until the morning. His parents told him that it was just the house settling, and that he was perfectly safe. But the beast was still there. Then he started to smell it. The stench changed from night to one evening. Jonathan would wake up to the reeking of rotting flesh, and the next he would be overwhelmed with what could only be described as gasoline fumes. It became hard to get a full night's sleep, and when he started trying to ignore the stenches and sounds to continue sleeping, but he never could completely forget about the beast. But even on nights when it seemed to be inactive, there would still be the occasional wafting of smoke and growling breath. The night of Jonathan's 6th birthday, it started to speak. It would whisper terrifying things and get louder and louder every night. By the time that he fell out of bed and his wrist was broken, he was petrified of this thing that was all too real for him. His parents weren't going to do anything, and he felt more trapped than he ever had before. There were nights where the worst part of the beast wasn't its existence or the fear that it triggered, but the horrible things it said. Words would whisper out from that dark space beneath the bed that no child should ever hear. If Jonathan's will was weaker, he would have thrown himself down to his death just to get away from that infernal voice. And there he was, in the middle of the bed, driving laughter threatening to push him to the very edge. He figured one option, and one option only. He had to do the unthinkable and acknowledge its existence. Please leave me alone." His voice left a whisper, but the beast heard it, and surprised that the child talked, it took a second to answer.
"I don't think so."
Its voice trailed off with a flick of a serpentine tongue. Maybe we could be friends instead." Jonathan used the only sentence he was ever taught to use when infant. Laughing, screaming like a maniac, the monster screeched out a shrill,
"Sure thing, boy, we'll be the best of friends,"
followed by a terrifying, wall-shaking, chest-burning cackle. So are we friends?" Jonathan stammered.
"Sure, child. Come down here, and I can see you, and you can see me."
In his childish ignorance, Jonathan figured that it was telling the truth, and even if it wasn't, he wanted this torment to end. And whatever was waiting down there had to be better.
"That's right. Step onto the ground. Come to see me, friend."
The second his foot hit the ground, he squealed in pain. A hand much bigger than an adult man's and covered in despair grabbed onto his ankle. Jagged, uneven claws dug into his skin as he tried to pull his leg up. The creature screamed and tried to pull him down. The arm was massive and it looked like snakes were squirming beneath the skin. Jonathan screamed when he saw it, and he used every bit of strength in his body to force himself away from it and onto his and couldn't follow and retreated back underneath the bed. accompanied by violent wheezing and heavy breaths. "You lied! You lied!" The beast hissed like a snake and fell silent for the rest of the night, falling into a fitful sleep. The next day, Jonathan was so tired that he could barely get out of bed and go about with his day. The beast was getting stronger as he lurked in the darkness, and the boy worried that soon he would be able to up from the dark place underneath the bed. He knew for sure it was getting stronger, as he began to see it everywhere he went. At first, it was just an out-of-place shadow who was shuffling in the bushes, but as time went on, and his 7th birthday drew nearer, these visions would get more detailed, petrifying every time. Dirty yellow eyes would peer out of the shadows, massive claw marks would appear on the trees outside of his house, and that horrible breathing everywhere, constantly in his ear wherever he was. The beast would not leave him alone, and it was taking a horrible toll on his mental state. Countless nights in a row, Jonathan came to the conclusion that it would be either the beast or himself. He tried to tell his parents, but Mommy wasn't around too much. He tried to tell a teacher, but they seemed to only care when he mentioned that his parents didn't notice it. So he figured he would have to take care of it. And he would do it completely on his own. He just needed a chance. That chance came the night after his birthday. His mother had put on a little party for him and 3 of his friends, and he had been given a baseball bat and glove. He was overjoyed when he unwrapped the bat because he knew in his heart exactly how it would liberate him. After thanking his mother a dozen times, he ran upstairs to slip the bat discreetly underneath his pillow, hoping that neither his parents nor the beast somehow noticed, before returning to the party. That night, after he tucked himself into bed, he fell asleep like a baby. His room, completely peaceful. The familiar breathing, along with a low growl, jerked him awake.
"This is it, little one,"
that accompanied with the smell of burning rubber and decomposing meat.
"Your time has come."
Jonathan was scared, but knew hope in the instrument lying right beneath his head.
"Climb out of bed. Come down here. Come to my realm."
This was said in a surprisingly calm tone, compared to the maniac laughter that usually filled his room. Jonathan put on the best fake apathy in his... and he answered, "I don't care if you want me. Come up here and get me. I won't fight." He paused for a moment, as if there was hesitation in its voice, but finally, it hissed.
"Yes, I will come up there."
Jonathan readied his bat, its aluminum glinting in the faint light that the room had. One of the monster's giant hands grabbed the bed, and with a mighty heave, the other hand grabbed on next to its twin. It was almost like the beast was pulling itself up from a chasm, an incredibly strenuous task. Jonathan was shaking in terror as he saw the disgusting arms and the maggots crawling underneath the oversized claws. No child could imagine as horrible as this, and no child should ever have to. Finally, after heaving and pulling, the very tip of the beast's head became visible from Jonathan. 4 giant curled horns protruded from its skull, each one a different size and shape. Immediately, Jonathan knew where to bring the bat down, and he would have to wait a few more seconds when he could see the beast's eyes. He knew that he had to strike. The bat came down with a speed and accuracy one would never expect from a young child. Not hit the beast right between the disgusting yellow eyes. The surprise made him let go of the edge of the bed and fall. Jonathan looked over the edge to see disappointment that the evil being had not fallen back to wherever he had crawled from, but was instead struggling to get up from the ground right. For the first time, he saw the creature in its entirety. Its body was covered in the same coarse fur as its arms, but was much less muscular. And its ribs were protruding from its skin, and its legs looked like it belonged to a malnourished bull. Its head and face were reminiscent of a deer, a bobcat, and was an absolutely horrifying sight to behold. A forked tongue slithered back and forth in between its needle-like fangs. Ignoring the horrible face, Jonathan looked at the ground instead as he swung the bat again. It was brought down hard onto the beast's left leg, and its bone cracked under the blow. The beast swung at the boy with one of his clawed hands, but it missed in the confusion, and it staggered backwards. Suddenly, an insane courage overtook the young boy, and he leapt from the bed, bat overhead. He brought it down hard on the beast's skull again, and the creature fell to the ground. Jonathan didn't stop there, though. He kept beating it, pounding it into the ground. "You're nothing but a bug!" he screamed at the creature as he hit it with the force of 1,000 trucks. The creature tried to stop him, but this was a confusing place for it, and it had been taken by surprise. Blood and tears ran down its face as it murmured,
Please don't kill me.
Through a mouth of broken teeth. "Know what? I think I may have a better idea." Jonathan giggled as he put down the bat.
Yes, anything, just don't kill me.
It snarled, humbled beyond what could have ever been expected from that arrogant horror. "Mr. Gillette will see you now." The intercom went off in the waiting room as the sharply dressed 30-year-old stood up and straightened his tie. "Thank you," he said sharply into the intercom as he opened up the door to his boss's office. "Jonathan, why are you here? Why didn't you knock?" Mr. Gillette said snidely as he eyed the newcomer underneath his spectacles. Jonathan laughed and stepped in. "Call me sir now." He started making himself a coffee with Mr. Gillette's cappuccino machine. "Don't touch that! What do you think you're doing, barging in here like this? I have an important meeting in 5 minutes. Jonathan looked at his superior and then at the coffee that he had just begun to sip. "Oh, I am that important meeting. I convinced your dear secretary that I desperately needed to talk to you, and to put me down as a client." He grasped the warm drink in his hand. "This coffee's disgusting. Almost as bad as your hair." Jonathan tossed it onto the ground, and the ceramic mug broke, the brown liquid spilling all over the white carpet. "What do you think you're doing, Jonathan? You have 5 seconds before I call security." Jonathan sat down in the chair across from his manager and leaned in, dropping his voice to a whisper. "I want your job. You can either give it to me, or we can do it the hard way." Mr. Gillette pushed Jonathan away and hovered his finger above the security button. "Get out." "All right. Hard way it is. Might want to get your things in order." Looked at him and left. And Mr. Gillette simply sat there trying to make sense of the events that had just transpired. That night, Thomas Gillette was working late, when apparently he made the decision that he would rather take the 20-story fall from his office than go on for another day. Jonathan Haynes was the last person to speak to him and thus was considered to possibly have a part in this. However, he was out getting drinks with friends that night and was nowhere near the office. Reviewing of the security camera shows that Mr. Gillette was walking around seemingly talking to himself, and later in the tapes running from absolutely nothing. At the end, he was shown trudging towards the office with a crowbar in his hand. Later investigation shows that Mr. Gillette must have used the crowbar to break the glass out of the frame so that he could wriggle out. He had huge scratches on his back that at first were an anomaly, but were later deemed to be caused by the broken glass. All the police needed to check this off as a suicide was there, but one investigator was still suspicious of foul play. Due to the persistence of this particular detective, they went to check the footage from his office itself. The camera in his office skipped frames and were very unreliable for the first couple minutes of the tape. After Mr. Gillette left his office to go to the hall, the camera burnt out completely and recorded nothing but darkness for the remainder of the evening, but nobody thought to double-check the first 5 minutes. If one was to pause it and focus on the far corner of the room, they would see a dark shape. To the grainy, low-definition footage, it almost looked like a crouching beast with massive claws, a nest of horns, and a wide, toothy, malevolent smile plastered across its goat-like face. But that is ridiculous. Everyone knows. Monsters don't
exist.
Are you scared easily? That's what my trainer would ask me on my first day. I said no, of course not. Or I wouldn't be working in the middle of the woods. Apparently, that wasn't the right answer because my trainer just shook his head and asked me again. Thought about it, and I said, I suppose it depends on what there was to be scared of out here. If we were referring to bears, then yeah, I was easily scared of a raging animal that's 3 times my size. If we're referring to the nameless threat of monsters and ghosts in the dead of night, he stopped me there. I guess I'd given him the answer he wanted. He gestured for me to follow. We started our hike around the main trail of the park. As we walked, we stopped periodically to point something out. Big tree. A few years ago, we found a kid lying under this tree. He'd frozen to death during a blizzard. Wandered off, circled back here before we could get to him. We walked a bit further, and took a dogleg off the path to the right until we reached a steep bluff. He pointed. Down there is where we found the body of a mother and her newborn baby. I don't know how they got there. My guess is she wanted to breastfeed and didn't want to do it on the main path. A mile further, and we stopped at the rocky cliff face. He pointed up. Kid disappeared right there, where you're standing. Found his body halfway up that cliff a month later. We'd searched at least 4 times. We don't know how he got there. We walked for at least 5 miles into the woods. There were so many stories and stops that I lost count. I wasn't sure what point he was trying to make. I just nodded and followed along. At the deepest part of the trail, there was a very clear marker that had been placed to advise the trail had ended. He kept going into the trees. I stepped over obstacles with great care, while he seemed to know the area by heart. I asked him where we were going, but he just kept going without looking to see if I was keeping up. And I'm not sure how far we walked, probably half a mile or so, when I saw something ahead of us. Through the trees, I could barely make out the right angles of it, and if there's one thing even the least savvy person knows, it's that nature doesn't make right angles. My trainer led us right to it. But the closer we got, the more unsure his steps became. He stumbled for the first time since we'd gotten off the path, and I got the sense that he was taking us here only because some sense of duty demanded he do it. We came to the clearing where the angled thing was, and as we broke the tree line, I stopped in my tracks and just stared. I thought it was a practical joke. I looked at him, but he was staring off to the side, facing away from me. We were quiet, looking at the thing. It was a staircase. A perfect, brand new one. It looked as if it had come from one of the prefab development houses that you see everywhere these days. Carpet was off-white. Even had a little landing at the bottom. For a crazy second, I could feel a distinct sense of tilting, as if I couldn't quite deal with what I was seeing, and I remember thinking that was how people who went crazy must feel. As if they're falling. Not quickly, but as if guided by something. I shook it off, but definitely shaken. I couldn't stand the way we just stood there, as if the stairs were some kind of wild thing that demanded caution. I started to move forward, but my trainer threw his arm out and stopped me. He looked at the stairs, brows furrowed, and spoke very quietly. They're everywhere out here. You'll see them just about every time we go out on a call. It's normal. He looked me in the eyes as he said that, driving home the point. I nodded and I looked back at the stairs. I noticed there was no debris on them, no pine needles or animal shit or even dirt. A word popped into my head, and once it got there, I couldn't get rid of it. Wrong. I mean, it would make a great story in those alien and Bigfoot websites, I thought. See the article, a big one on the front of those black and white magazines and grocery stores that scream about Bat Boy and the lady who married a Yeti. Stairs in the woods, what do they mean?
When we get back to the center, I'm going to give you a couple of forms. You're going to sign them, even if you don't want this job anymore. You're not going to talk about anything I've told you today, and that goes especially for these. You're not going to talk about them. You're not going to take pictures of them. You're not going to go to any newsy type place and tell them about how there's weird shit going on out here. You understand me? I nodded, a little perturbed. I'm going to give you a little word of advice, son. You're going to see them everywhere. They're never going to look the same, and that's fine. Maybe they're big, maybe they're small, maybe they're falling apart. Maybe they're like these. They're brand new. You probably won't ever see the same ones twice, but supposing you do, it's nothing to worry about. That being said, you're not going to go near them. This right here, this is as close as you're ever going to get. You're not going to touch them or ever go up them. And you sure as hell aren't going to go blabbing around to the visitors about how they might see them. Because most of them won't. And if you're just going to send them right to me. He stopped ahead. Watch the stairs carefully for a moment. They've been out here as long as I've been. That's a long damn time. We all know about them. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions, and I know you'll be... That's normal. But you probably won't have a lot of luck talking to anyone who's been here more than a year, and sooner or later, you'll get that way too, assuming that you stick around. You'll figure out that they're just something you gotta deal with. And you'll find the urge to talk about them is less. And then some rookie will come and he'll ask you about it, and you'll just tell him exactly what I'm telling you. They're normal, and it's nothing to worry about. I didn't exactly, but I just nodded again. There were too many questions to ask, but one seemed more urgent than the others. Why can't we touch them? I finally asked. What happens if we do? He cleared his throat, and he shifted. All I can tell you is that a kid once asked me that about a rattlesnake with no venom. I was working for another park. We had it on display in the animal exhibit. The kid wanted to know why we can't hold him, since he's got no poison. I told the kid that just because the rattler's got no venom doesn't mean he can't bite. I opened the top of the rattler's tank, and I provoked him a little. Snake hisses, lunges at me, just about gets me. Kids all scream. Put the lid on the tank, and some of the kids are crying. Little boys staring at me, and I say, "You still want to hold him?" He looked at me carefully. There's going to be a lot of things out here that are going to make you curious. You're going to want to talk about them, figure them out, go explore, see what's what. But anytime that happens, I want you to think about that rattler, son. You hear me? I nodded. Now I'm going to ask you again, Bauer. Are you scared easily? I thought about it. I don't know, sir. You know, that's the right answer.
Take it easy. Take it easy on the truth serum. No more of the. We're live. Hi there, kids. It's me, MrCreepyPasta.
And I like midget porn.
Ooh. Hi there, kids. It's me, MrCreepyPasta.
And I'm a Russian spy. До свидания.
Ooh. Hi there, kids. I'm Pasta.
And I just pooped myself.
Everybody has whoa, just? Hey there, kids. I'm MrCreepyPasta.
Sometimes, when nobody's looking, I go to the dog park and I sniff the dogs' butts.
Hi there, kids. I'm MrCreepyPasta.
And I'm a cam model. Ties ribbons to his penis and dances to Taylor Swift.
This is getting sad. You're not even just saying things, you're just coming to self-realizations and just not wanting to be here. Hi there, kids. I'm MrCreepyPasta.
My mother once told me I was adopted.
Hi there, kids. It's me, Mr. Creepypasta.
And I'm Vincent Vinacava.
And today we're here to talk to you about the Creepypasta comic book. You guys probably heard us talk about it before. Well, now it's available for everybody and not just the backer.
April 7th on Amazon. Follow the link. Supplies are limited.
Very. But you don't want to miss out on this. And it's also going to be the start of the Spooktacular this year. So you'll be able to find out what actually happened to him, whose body was stolen by Bizarro, and me, who's still stuck in the deep web.
Oh, yeah! I don't know. I just thought it was like... I just thought I'd do that. Like it was like a catchphrase.
Oh, yeah!
Snap into a Slim Jim! Dig it!
Ah, welcome. I take it you've come for a story. Of course you did. Why else would you have tracked down my website? After all, it takes a little browser to even locate this dark little corner of the internet. But you already knew that. So, if it's a story you want, it's a story you shall receive. And it would please me very much to read one to you this evening. All of you. Shall we begin? I've got the perfect one in mind. It's a tale about those who've been wronged, and the depths they'll sink to in the name of revenge. The Creepypasta comic is available on Amazon, April 7th.
Everyone get on the fucking ground! Get on the ground now!
Get down! I don't want to see anyone do anything stupid.
We're not gonna be taking up anyone's time as long as everyone follows the rules.
Alarm's clear.
Open the drawers in the vault.
Mark it. We're at 2 minutes.
I said open the fucking vault!
F.
I know what I'm fucking doing! Thank you.
Minute 30.
Got it. Don't look at me, look at the fucking door.
I am looking at the fucking door. Don't miss any of the money. Don't you reach for that cell phone, lady. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I will.
Time!
1 minute.
We're doing good, kid. One more bag.
Wait. No, you didn't. Did you just do what I think you fucking did?
What's wrong?
Silent alarm. The teller hit the silent alarm. We have to go.
I'm almost done.
I don't give a shit, man. We have to go. We have to go now.
Almost.
Fuck, man. We don't have time for this.
Almost! Jesus, give me a second.
Time, Frank. That's fucking time.
I'm done. Let's go.
Drive. It's the cops. But I think... They're at the bank. They're not following us. We did it, Frank. I don't believe we fucking did it.
You used my name.
Yeah, Frank? We're out of the bank. But do we have to use code names until we reach
No,
Mexico?
Johnny, you said my name in the bank. Everyone there fucking heard you, man.
Oh, shit, I did.
Yeah, you did. And a room full of civilians and tellers all heard you say Frank.
Well, what does it matter? We'll be in Mexico by tomorrow anyway.
It matters because we would be in Mexico until tomorrow. There's countless other things that could go wrong between now and tomorrow, Johnny.
Shit, don't throw that at me. This is my first job. You've done this how many fucking times?
You're right, Johnny. Never worked with an amateur like you. You're right.
Man, fuck you. Look, I'm sorry, man. This is what? The biggest score you've ever made in one job? We got to the bank before the branch transferred just like you wanted. Everything went off fine without a problem.
Except for the alarm.
But we made it out and the cops didn't even notice our car. We're home free, Frank. I didn't say your last name. How many Franks do you think are in Texas? How many Franks do you think use that bank alone? We're rich and we fucking got away with it.
Yeah, Johnny Rich.
Rich!
This time tomorrow, we're sitting on the damn Mexican coasts with margaritas and girls.
Margaritas and girls.
But don't you ever screw me over like that again. You hear me?
Why did you bring me on this job, Frank? Because I'm a fast learner. This. Wow. We're rich and we're staying here.
Get used to it.
Get used to it. This is what rich feels like staying in a shithole motel?
The place takes cash, and they don't need a name on the register, which is good, since the cops will be looking for someone named Frank.
Oh, great. We're bringing that up again.
Look, we just made off with enough cash to put us on Easy Street for the rest of your whiny-ass life. Do you think that the border isn't going to be swarmed with cops right now? We'll get there around 5 a.m. Cops are lazy. They'll be too tired to even know what to look for, and we can get waved on through. We've got to stay here just one night. Sleep all you can, and then we can get whatever 5-star hotel you want.
Oh, yeah. When you put logic to it, that totally gets rid of the roaches.
Sleep now.
Yes, Mom. Oh my God, are you serious? Like 2:30. Did you set a wake-up call? Frank. Hey, Frank.
Johnny, please. Just sleep, okay?
Frank. Yeah. Hello? Hello? Are you kidding me? Seriously? Seriously? Hey, it's late. Can we stop the childish...
Frank's gonna kill you.
What did you say? Hey. Hey!
Jan, what are you yelling about?
There's someone on the phone who...
What?
It's nothing. It's front desk. I want us to get to Mexico in time. I'm setting up a wake-up call.
All right.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Whatever, man. Just stay cool, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. You too. Frank? Hey, Frank. Hello?
Frank's going to kill you.
Who is this? How could you know that?
Frank wouldn't let you get away with all that money. He wants it for himself. Frank wants to kill you.
You followed us. Are you a cop trying to mess with me? Are you trying to get a cut of the money? What's going on?
Frank wants your money. Frank had pulled these jobs before.
No, I said his name at the bank. You know that. You must have heard, and you followed us. Is this some kind of interrogation? Are you recording this to get a confession or something? I should hang up.
Hang up, and he'll kill you.
He can't kill me. He's asleep.
How do you know?
Frank. Hey, Frank.
He's not asleep. There's a gun in his bed. Don't get up. He'll know.
I'm on the phone. He'll already know. I'm talking out loud. What is this?
Why doesn't he have another partner?
His last partner was arrested. He was sloppy.
He chose an amateur.
Yeah, of course. Someone he knew wasn't going to rat on him and would be in for the long haul. Someone new.
Someone who wasn't going to be missed.
I don't... Then his last partner?
Dead. He kills them. He leaves them. He takes off with the money.
This is his biggest score. This is different.
Is that what he told you? Johnny?
You know who I am too? How could you possibly know me too? You were in the bank, but I didn't say my name.
He wants to kill you, Johnny.
Stop saying that. This is a clean job, and we're making it out of this together. It's an even split. We
And you
agreed.
think he's going to stick to that agreement?
We agreed
When
on a
he
50-50
knew
split.
times he packed the money because he
I
needed
don't
you,
believe that.
and he doesn't need you any longer.
Stop it!
He's going to kill you.
What could I even do?
Kill him
What?
before he kills you.
No.
If you kill him first, think of all the money.
No, we agreed.
Think of all the money, Johnny. You could have it all.
But Frank...
Frank was planning to do the same to you
Yeah,
the whole time.
yeah, from the very beginning.
Right. From the very beginning.
He used me. He was going to dump me here for the cops to find. That would distract them and let him move across the border. Is that what he was thinking?
That's exactly what he was thinking. They're so busy cataloging a murder, who could see one car move past a checkpoint? Nobody.
Son of a bitch.
Son of a bitch.
I couldn't. I can't actually
Johnny,
kill someone.
You either die in a dirty old motel room for the roaches to pick at your rotting carcass with nothing. Poor. Your mother would never even hear about it. Or you kill him, and you leave filthy, stinking rich.
Kill him.
Frank's going to kill you, Johnny, unless you kill him first.
Unless I kill him first.
He's waking up, Johnny.
He is?
He's waking up and he's reaching for his gun in the dark. Don't you see it? Don't you see it, Johnny? He's moving his hand.
I don't know. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. I think I see
There's
it.
your gun, Johnny.
Fuck. Fuck. I left it on the floor.
Find it.
Fuck.
Find it!
I'm looking. Hold on. What's he doing?
John, who are you talking to?
He's awake, Johnny. He's taking aim.
Frank, stop.
Stop what? Stop sleeping? What's up with you?
He has his gun out, Johnny. He's gonna do it.
Fuck, man. Calm down. We can still split the money.
Johnny, what are you doing, man? We had a deal. We had this plan.
I fucking knew it, man.
He
I
admits
fucking
it.
knew you were gonna gun me down from the start. I fucking knew it.
John!
Fire!
Well, you done a great service calling in the gunshot. We've been searching for this guy. They knocked over a bank about 200 miles upstate.
God, I mean, I checked him in and everything, but I don't think that's what this was about. Well, I'm glad you got him, officer. Stress must be high from a bank job. They were yelling and everything in a room before I heard a gunshot.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. That kind of money can do things to people. Oh yeah, just another question for the statement. The guy we arrested, Johnny something or other, was saying something about a man on the phone. Was that you, or was there anyone in the hotel who could have called their room?
Phone? No, that's impossible. The phone's been out for years. It's a bit easier to just not pay attention until someone complains.
Any complaints?
Well, hardly any customer.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
It started with just the one. It was in an old plastic bottle, bobbing in front of my paddle boat. It glistened in the water, sunlight bouncing off the surface like a star, caught in the glassy water. Litter, I thought. Couldn't just ignore it. It marred the serenity of the small estuarine preserve around it. I paddled up to it, lowering myself to pull it out and toss it into my bag of disposal. Then I saw it. Tucked inside, folded into a rough rectangle, a piece of paper, a note, purposefully folded,
A message in a bottle. I didn't feel disgusted by the trash. I felt butterflies from some inner child, some sense of excitement. I was a kid again, and I found a floating letter, someone's private secret or treasure, tossed into the wide anonymity of the sea. And found here, floating up to me, on a rental paddle boat in a podunk tourist town in Florida. I pulled it out and read, scrawled in chicken scratch. Being your slave, what should I do but tend? Upon the hours and times of your desire, I have no precious time at all to spend, nor services to do till you require. And still, I love you. Liza, I called out as soon as I finished. Hey, Liza, this is crazy. I looked around for my sister. She was about 50 yards behind me, moving around one of the patches of the mangroves, kneeling on her board. I could tell she was having a little harder than I am. Coming down from the Midwest after all these years, her struggling to find her sea legs again made sense. She looked over to me and waved. Hey, everything okay? Yeah, I just found this poem inside a bottle. There was what? I found a bottle. What? I could hear the strain in her voice, so I paddled over towards her. I was excited. It was like finding a secret from a stranger, one you don't feel any guilt in sharing. When I got close, I could see the wariness on Liza's face. Hey, you doing all right? I asked. Yeah, she panted out, and I could see a strange smile. I'm just not in great shape for this anymore. Listen, I'm gonna paddle over to that sandbar and relax for a bit. I nodded back. No worries. I'll join you in a few minutes. Some person threw a note in the water. Some love poem. It's crazy. I've never seen that before. She nodded back, but I could tell she wasn't really listening. Just tired. Probably thirsty and wanting a break since we'd been out all morning. I went back around the bend, wanting to go the long way around the mangroves to get a little more movement in before taking a break. I didn't figure I'd find anything quite as interesting besides the note. Then I found the second one. And the third one. Around the far side of the mangroves, I saw the 2 bottles shimmering in the water again, and I paddled over with fervor. 2 more Coke bottles. 2 more notes inside. I didn't even find it weird, and that should have been strange enough. I was just curious, almost expectant. What would I see now? The first note was folded with the same meticulous creases that the original one had. I pulled it out with haste and read, Nor dare I question with my jealous thought where you may be or your affairs suppose, but like a sad slave stay and think of naught, save where you are how happy you make those. Why did you leave me, my love? Why did you leave me? I tossed the bottle back into the ocean, carelessly as I pulled out the next note. I guess my mind forgot about the littering. The third note was simply crammed into the top of the bottle, no clean crease or careful fold, and the writing was short, the handwriting was worse. I loved you, and you left me. Why did you leave me? I could feel a quick chill pass down my back. Even on the bright and hot light of the Florida day, I felt a chill, and suddenly, I felt very alone. I looked back for Liza, then remembered she'd moved to the sandbar. I should have gone over to her then. Instead, I saw a 4th bottle, and behind that a 5th, and behind that a 6th. I paddled towards them, where they formed a line moving into an alcove of red mango trees in the outer section of the estuary. Here the trees were taller, less well kept than the outer section, close to the rental center. Here the shadows, even at midday, were longer, and the roots seemed to hold back the current of the water so that it was still within. I reached down and grabbed the first one. I didn't really feel that same sense of wonder now. It was almost like anger. Anger at finding these secrets. Anger at their being poured into the water like this. The rough note was balled into the top. I love you, and you left me. I thought you would leave forever, but I never forget. I never forget. In like fashion, the next was unevenly written, almost like a child learning to write. I love you, and I needed you for all these years. All these years. And the sixth. I've cried so long alone. So long, I love you, I love you. Before I've even tossed this one back into the water, I felt the brush of the seventh bottle against my knee. Sticking out over the edge of the board, I grabbed it, not even thinking about a note. Which there was. Crammed into it again like garbage. The writing was nearly illegible now. I love you. But I hate you. I wanted to leave. I was tired, and whatever chills I had felt had passed. I was acutely aware of just how hot this still water was, how much I could taste the salt on my breath, feel its sting on my dried skin, and then I saw them, in front of me, like a constellation cluttered into the stretch of this shoreless line of trees. A dozen, maybe 2 dozen, maybe more, floating along like dead fish, floating dumb and blindly glittering, mocking the tranquility of the cool shadow of the trees. I couldn't help myself, and I paddled in further and further. The notes were all crammed in, all scrawled with fervor and rushed writing, all the same. I love you, and I hate you. 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 I love you, and... Something splashed in the water behind me. Breaking the silence and stillness, I turned, and I could feel my heart slam against my ribs and chest. It was nothing. No fallen tree, no animal, no person. Just the bottles. Scores of bottles, beneath the mangroves amongst them, just floating. I looked around, dropping back to my knees and panting like a dog. I noticed now how loud my breath was and my heartbeat. There was no other sound besides the distant waves and small whistle through the leaves. Where were the birds, the fish? Where were the other paddlers? I didn't know how deep into the mangrove trees I'd paddled. The path had curved, forked, bottles floated everywhere, and the stretches of trees looked identical, like funhouse mirrors, and shoved into the grove. Then I saw something distinct. A canvas tarp hanging from the trees, a rain jacket, tarnished and ripped, but clear in intention. It was draped across the branches, not blown in by the wind. It was a shelter. Shelter for someone. A few plastic bags with empty plastic bottles filling them were tied to the branches of the trees there. Candy wrappers floated in the water. Someone had been here, and it had been recent. I looked into the depths of the mangroves to see if there were any other signs of habitation. It was too thick, and the branches choked out a great deal of the sunlight. With the light behind me, my eyes could not adjust to the darkness within the trees. I was on my hands and knees now, peering in. My hands shot back as I felt some object touch my fingers, grasped over the edge of the board. I looked down and saw a bottle, a green plastic one, with one more note inside. I couldn't stop. I pulled it from the water and I opened it, pulling the note from within. It was folded neatly like the first ones had been, the torn bottom from a receipt. So true a fool is love, that in your will, although you do anything, he thinks no ill. I love you, Nellie. I love you, and I want you home. I paused. Stun and shock that melted rapidly into horror, I grabbed the paddle, rowing as quickly as I could, and screamed, "Liza! Liza! God, where are you?" I heard nothing in response. I didn't know how far I was, but I kept screaming. I screamed because I knew a Nellie. Liza. Nellie.
Children are fascinating creatures.
I can't help but marvel at the way they act and think. Their minds are molded so easily, so effortlessly, like the softest of dough in the strongest of hands. I wonder I'll never understand this child, though, and how she thought. These things drifted through my head as I examined the dimly lit room. The doors and windows were taped off with crime scene ribbon. The sticky messes on the floor were being sampled by a forensics team. And the sight before me was grisly. What was once an 8-year-old lay on the ground. One wouldn't be able to tell what she was just by looking. Her head was hardly attached, if only by the spinal column. It lolled grotesquely to the side. The syrupy liquid coagulated after all of these hours. One eye was missing from the skull and sitting a few feet away. There was a gap where her stomach used to be, as if bitten through by a beast. Innards lay strewn about her like a party popper on New Year's. Ghastly slash marks adorned her tiny wrists, hands, and fingers, crusted with blood and shredded body tissue, most likely from who or what was after her. Clearly, something wanted her dead. Her parents were in similar conditions. A mother, a father, and a grandmother, all strewn about in the living room. The place was a bloodbath. It made my stomach turn. It was clear that there was a struggle. Toys, dolls, puppets, blocks were flung about the place, magazines, broken glass. The living room looked like nightmare fuel. I gagged at the smell of blood and insides. They had to be at least 3 days old. It was becoming too much. Dizzily, I turned and walked away from the scene. Perhaps somewhere else in the house would be easier to stomach. I found myself upstairs once my days passed. From the looks of it, I was in the child's room. No sign of struggle here. All was peachy and everything was in place, except one thing. A notebook. A little school notebook lay open on the floor. I plucked it up from the ground, turned it over in my hands. I nearly dropped it out of shock. Crusty, bloody lettering covered it. Symbols, signals, and signs. A face was scrawled on the paper. On almost every page. Stitched up, twisted face. The eyes were blacked out with tiny lines through them, like buttons. It looked similar, but I couldn't place it. A small piece of paper fluttered out of the pages and landed on the floor. I knelt and picked it up. Don't you fear, my child. I'll keep the ghosts away. I'll keep you safe at night. I'll be your friend by day. But when it comes to friends, I have very few, so please, darling, or my heart will be torn in two. It didn't seem quite right. I turned the paper over and read the back. Madame Zoe's Worry Dolls. Your friend till the end. Strange. I paged through the book again, starting at the beginning. It looked like a normal day. Little things were written about friends at school, conflicts with parents. The one thing caught my eye. Grandma got me a doll for my birthday. It's nice, I guess, but scary. Mom said I couldn't give it away. I don't want it, though. A few pages later was a similar entry. I keep Grandma's doll in the drawer. I don't like its eyes. It stares at me at night. It's creepy. There were several more like this. The doll watches me wherever I go. Its head turns. None of my other toys have come alive before. It's weird. I named my doll Aggie. She's not so bad. She told me today that we're going to be friends. Aggie doesn't like my mom or dad or grandma. I don't know why. Maybe because they think I play with her too much. The entries
became more and more disturbing as I read them. Aggie made me mad today. She called my mom bad things. She wouldn't stop talking. So I ripped off her eye. She didn't like that. I said sorry later. Aggie is my best friend. I love Aggie. I hate my parents. Help. After that last entry, there was nothing but scribble and symbols. A chill struck my spine. I felt